Murray City Council to order. Welcome, everyone. And if you'll take a moment to reflect, we'll have the pledge after that, led by Councilman Hudspeth.
Please join along with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we'll consider the minutes of the September 10th, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Have a motion, second to approve those minutes. Any questions, comments, additions? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Minutes are approved. Under the mayor's report, I've got 3 or 4 things I wanted to mention tonight. Number one, I want to, the city generally discusses how you want to handle Halloween in the city. And that's about a month away. And I've talked to the health department about it. And they recommend, and it appears that the safest thing to do is that we do not promote door-to-door this year, but everyone knows why. But rather encourage our people to participate in the Trail of Treats at the park. They're going to have a drive-through with vendors. The kids are going to stay in the car with their parents and hold their containers out the window, and there'll be vendors out there who'll put the candy in those. They're going to have that on the 30th from 4:30 to 8, I believe, or 7, just a minute. Anyway, it'll be on the 30th, starting at 4:30. So anybody like to discuss that further? Or if you think of a better idea, then I'll open the floor to that.
Mayor, I think it's a good idea, what you're suggesting. I just wanted to know about traffic control with these cars, or, you know, they may be going, and last year they said we had that part one meeting Monday night this week. He said we had around 5,000 kids come through the park. I think most of them, you know, walk through the park, and I don't know if they'll get bottlenecked or backed up or what. Is that something you think about?
I'll ask the chief to provide some assistance out there and control. It is from 4:30 to 7. It starts in Central Park and it'll end at Bee Creek. So is that agreeable if everyone will handle that this way? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Is the park board taking donations of treats to make sure that there's ample amount of how they handle that?
The vendors, anyone that wants to participate and pass out goodies, they provide all of the candy themselves. We've never spent money on candy. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, somewhat. If you're shutting down the city and everyone's going to come out there, I just want to make sure that.
That's what I'm saying about crowd control, it's going to be traffic control.
I'm sure if they want to take donations, they will. And if they would, you know, certainly like, they can probably do that through the park office. Yes.
That'd be something y'all might want to look at.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, does that mean that there's not gonna be any door-to-door, and you could still do it?
Well, I don't know that we could stop somebody from going down the street, but I think that it won't be sanctioned by us whereby we set the hours and and all that is my thinking. There may be some small neighborhoods where parents feel comfortable, letting their children go down the street, but as far as just, us designating it, this will be the hours, we just don't think it's probably in the best interest for the children and the people opening the doors, to go door to door this year, okay? Second thing I want to mention is that I just want to remind everyone that there's only 6 more days before it's the end of the census taking. So we want to encourage everyone that's listening or watching and reading the paper that this is very important to our city in a lot of ways. And so we need to get as many people counted as possible.
Mayor, how successful has the Monday and Friday registration event in the city?
Danetta, would you answer that?
They usually get about 3 or 4 people a day when they're here.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Third thing I wanted to mention is several of you have asked from time to time if when we send a resolution to someone, if we get any kind of response. On June the 25th, we sent a resolution over to the fiscal court regarding the statute. I have not received any official acknowledgement of that. However, they did vote to leave it where it was, so that could have been their response. And then on July the 23rd, we sent a resolution regarding the 911 fee. I've yet to receive any type of official acknowledgement that they received that. However, I did read in the paper that at their last meeting, they formed an appeals committee to hear appeals from anyone who does not think that they should have to pay. So I guess that would be their response to that resolution. But in answer to the question about have I received any type of acknowledgement or response, no.
Mr. Mayor, on the 911 item, what would be the recourse of the citizens of Murray if they didn't like that and wanted to take that to court? Is there any recourse in the courts? Is that something we need to ask Mr. Hopkins to?
I think they could request to appeal to that committee or board and explain to them why they feel like that evidently they decided not to do anything that was a blanket, but rather that individuals who didn't think that was appropriate, that the individuals could appeal as to why they did not think. And I've talked to several who said they plan on doing that.
Is there a deadline for that appeals process?
To appeal.
Yes.
I would say that once the tax bills go out would be when the appeals would. Would you agree with that, Mr. Hopkins?
When they go out.
Okay.
I would make contact before if you think you're going to contest it, simply because put them on notice that you disagree with it. And also that you may not be eligible to pay it for some reason, but challenge it before can always help.
And I think the question that'll come up is, do you refuse to pay and then appeal, or do you appeal first? So we'll have to find that answer and give it to the people. And the fourth thing I'll mention is that one of our really, really outstanding employees, Zach Warren. Zach, step out there, would you? Zach is our IT man, and he and another gentleman are venturing off and into a business of their own. And I'm sure that they'll be quite successful because he's a very, very talented young man. And Zach, thank you for everything that you've done, and we wish you the best. Okay. Okay, we're now ready to consider some ordinances. First one. The first one we want to consider is ordinance number 2020-1800 for a first reading. Madam Clerk, would you read that ordinance?
Ordinance number 2020-1800, first reading. An ordinance amending chapter 96 taxation, specifically chapter 9603 ad valorem tax, for the purpose of adopting an annual county assessment for property situated within the city as the basis for ad valorem tax levy.
Thank you. Ms. White, would you share some comments about that ordinance?
Good evening. At the last Finance Committee meeting, packets were distributed to the committee members that indicated the property assessments and the projected revenues calculated at the compensating rate of 30.33 cents per $100 of assessment, the prior year's rate of 31 cents, and the compensating rate plus the allowable 4% growth per KRS 132 of 31.54 cents. I believe the committee recommended adopting the rate of 31.54 cents. At this rate, the total projected revenue increase for the city would be $237,702 over the prior year. This represents tangible, personal, and new growth. It's important to note that when we're talking about this 4% allowable increase in revenues, we're not talking about a rate increase of 4%. It's an allowable 4% increase in revenues from the prior year. And for a property owner with an assessment of $100,000, the rate of 31.54 cents would result in an annual increase of $5.40. This doesn't include the school tax. For a property owner with an assessment of $150,000, the annual increase would be $8.10.
Any questions for Ms. White on the property tax? Did you want to go over some of the other, anything else?
I do have a question. I understand about tangible and personal, but did you say new growth?
Yes,
What is that?
new properties added to the tax roll.
Okay, like new homes being built? Or
New homes, new businesses, yes.
Any other questions? Remind everyone that that rate does include,
Yes, this rate does include the fire and policeman's pension fund rate of 0.0165.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Since this is the first reading, we will not vote on that. Thank you, Kim. Ordinance number 2020-1801. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 2020-1801, first reading. An ordinance amending City of Murray Code of Ordinances, Chapter 112, Insurance Companies, specifically 11202, Payment of License Tax, in order to update and clarify the language contained therein, and to create a new subchapter, specifically 11205, to identify exceptions to the payment of tax in this chapter.
Mr. Hopkins, you want to make some comments on that ordinance?
This ordinance was drafted at the request of the committee. I think we had a couple of meetings ago. So we started putting together an ordinance that maybe would help with economic development to try to attract businesses, like mainly getting businesses with home offices here, and to set some guidelines up so we can give them some incentive on the insurance tax. So while drafting this, we started thinking about, I think you all suggested maybe a reduction in the insurance tax to a certain level. We had to thinking, many times you have companies that have 4, 5, 6 different insurance companies, and how do we communicate with Frankfurt and with those insurance companies that this is one low rate across the board? So we got to put him together, and based on Mr. Manning's presentation at that meeting, it seemed to make more sense to not charge a tax if they meet certain guidelines. And that's what we have in this ordinance. And then the following ordinance you'll notice, which is our business license tax, if a business relocates with their main office here and meets these guidelines, then their fee for a business license is set at a certain amount. So that gives us assurance that we're getting the full money back. And I think that was something that he brought up at the last time he spoke. The money for the insurance tax goes to Frankfurt, but we don't know if we're getting it all back. This ensures that at least we know that if these companies come to our city, they relocate and meet these guidelines, they won't pay an insurance tax, but they will pay a $20,000 fee for licensing, which we think was a good trade-off. It gives us some security. And it also gives them, and gives our prospective employees some incentive too, because part of the requirements is they must employ 100 plus full-time equivalents for employees that qualify to be in the city of Murray. So, plus they also must meet some guidelines. They must be a $100 million company. They also must engage in interstate transportation and commerce, and they must domicile themselves and be considered located as their main office here in the city of Murray limits. So we qualify for the exemptions. So that's the proposal that I put together. If you need something different, we'll be glad to look at it, because it seemed like it might work as an exemption.
Any questions on
Thank you.
the items 6 and 7 both deal with the same issue? So Danette will go ahead and read the next ordinance, and then we'll just answer any questions about both of them.
Ordinance number 2020-1802, first reading. An ordinance amending City of Murray Code of Ordinances 110 general license requirements, specifically 11010 license tax, subparagraph C, to include a new classification and rate for businesses accepted for paying a license tax in chapter 11205.
Okay. Any questions on either of those ordinances? We won't vote on them. This will be the first reading, but if you have a question, try to answer it.
Shouldn't that word be, instead of accepted, exempted? Is that the way you spell accepted?
Did you,
From a reading of that, is that, am I looking at that right?
Well, it's an exception, I believe, in the other ordinance. It says exceptions on Amendment 2 Edition 1205. 1205 says exceptions, that's why I use the word exception.
That word is spelled, just a word, that's it. It's not that way on the ordinance. So we're approving the ordinance number 2020-1802, which says the correct wording in there, so,
This is accepted.
That's exactly the same.
okay, good.
okay, you've had the first reading of those two ordinances. Next, we have a consent agenda, whereby the council has revived the entity of a tree board. And the ordinance said that I would appoint 7 people to that. And so we appointed 7, staggered their terms so they wouldn't all go off the same time. And before we vote on that consent item, Mr. Streeter, would you like to, for the benefit of anyone who doesn't feel like they know everything there is to know about what a tree board does, you want to give a brief synopsis of that?
Yes, there was a tree board in Murray in the 70s and 80s apparently, and in the old ordinance, it reported to a committee that no longer exists. So when we began to look at that ordinance, we thought that it needed revision. And so we got Warren to update it, revise it, and modernize it. And I think you even said that it might have had some illegal elements in the old ordinance. And so he revised those and got rid of those and updated it. So now, basically, what the beautification committee, which has really been pushing this tree board, is the idea that we want to eventually have a recommendation of a tree and shrubs and maybe even a flower for the whole city. And that we want to, Ron Albritton tells me that now, if your sidewalks are more than a 1/4 inch pushed up by a tree or a shrub and someone trips on it, that the city can be liable. So, we're going to make sure that we don't have something like that happening in the city. And the homeowner would be contacted and they would be asked if the tree can be taken out, if it's diseased or if it's causing difficulties with the sidewalks. And if the homeowner doesn't want that to happen, then we can go to the code enforcement officer and they can deal with that. So that the idea there is not to force this down the throat of any of the citizens. It's to try to make the city more beautiful by having a tree board back in place.
Thank you. Anybody have a question on the tree board?
I do, Mayor.
Okay,
Not a question, but a comment. With the previous city I lived in was Madison, Mississippi, and we were a Tree City USA city. And one of the things that the Tree City USA city provided for was it kept, developers from cutting down beautiful large trees over a certain diameter. Is that part of what you do?
That would be one of the things that the tree board would be looking for, is to persuade developers not to bulldoze everything when they go into a tract and start to build new houses. Certainly what we want to do is try to make the city the most attractive city we can. And part of the reason we didn't get into the whole situation of getting back into the tree, what is it called again? The Tree City. We didn't get into that organization because they have so many hoops that you have to jump through. And after talking it over with the mayor and others, we decided that it was just too many things that they wanted the city to do before we could rejoin that. We had been in that many years ago, but we're not in it now.
I remember when we were at Tree City USA
Yeah.
a long time ago.
any other questions? Well, let me be the first to wish you all good luck.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to be brought before the council tonight?
I'd like to be recused from the voice vote.
Okay,
Consent agenda, please.
okay. Did you get that done, Anna? Okay. All in favor of item 8, the appointees to the tree board, please make a motion.
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The tree board is appointed. Any other questions? We do not have an executive session tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Motion made and second to adjourn this meeting. All in favor say aye.